We are here this afternoon to take a look at H517 and an amendment that Tucker has worked on with the member from Waterbury. Chair Stevens is here with us, so I want to welcome you, Tom. Good to see you. Tucker, would you maybe tee this up, and then we'll hear from the folks from Waterbury. Yeah, Representative.
Just a quick procedure question. Are we just doing a walkthrough? Exactly. We're not going to have time to get this through the center, or am I missing something?
So I want to.
I'm just curious.
Yeah,
I was looking at it going.
I want to understand what's going on here at Waterbury, and then I may beg for a possibility for us to move this quickly if we can help the town of Waterbury out. If not,
okay,
so be it.
I'm just curious because I said, man, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
thank you.
Just going to take a look and see what we can do here.
Okay.
It's a great question because we are in the waning days. So Tucker.
Good afternoon, Tucker Anderson, Legislative Council. For the record, H517 as introduced has two subsections in it. It is not very dissimilar from some of the other fire district dissolutions that you've dealt with this year, with one notable exception that I'll get to later. So initially, subsection A approves the dissolution of what is known as Duxbury Moortown Fire District Number 1 and memorializes that the voters of the fire district approved the dissolution of the fire district on August 6th, 2022. Background for that, I do not have materials to share with the committee that shows what the vote is. I only have minutes from that meeting that indicate that the voters, that the fire district is the way that it's phrased, approved the dissolution of the district. And it appears as though there were perhaps 4 individuals, some representing the Prudential Committee, maybe one person who did not represent the Prudential Committee at that meeting. Subsection B states that on the effective date of the act, which is on passage, that the fire district will cease to exist as a political entity or body corporate. This would be similar to the Rutland Fire District number 3 that was dissolved 6 years ago. The exception that fire district had no assets and no liabilities and no infrastructure, and for all purposes only existed legally, did not exist physically. This is different. And typically when you have assets, liabilities, and infrastructure, that has to get transferred to some other corporation, which is why there's an amendment that is posted on the committee's page to add a subsection C that would transfer assets, liabilities, property, and claims from the fire district to the Edward Farrar Utility District, pursuant to the vote that was held on August 6th, 2022. And the minutes reflect that that was a component of the annual meeting of the fire district, was the transfer of those things to the EFUD, as it's affectionately referred to within these halls. The second sentence states that the EFUD will have authority to collect any debts or other amounts due that have resulted from services provided to customers of the fire district. Why is that sentence in there? Well, because since 2013, it appears as though first the village of Waterbury, and then after the 2017 charter enactment, the EFUD has been operating these water services within the fire district and continue to operate water services within the fire district after the fire district voted to dissolve and walk away, which is potentially where the issues that come to your attention started. You'll recall from your time with the Colchester dissolutions over both this session and last biennium that usually there's an agreement executed between the corporations for the transfer of assets. Usually you get some idea formally of what the boundaries and the water lines are. And typically the transfer is between, at least in the most recent cases, municipal entity and a regional entity. In this case, some background that you should know about the legal structure of the EFUD is that the EFUD is an incorporated utility district that has its own charter, The voters of the EFUD are restricted to those who live within the EFUD's boundaries within the town of Waterbury. The commissioners of the EFUD have rate setting authority, which is not dissimilar. However, an issue that this committee has dealt with in the past is that the EFUD is one of those water districts that sets extraterritorial rates, which is different from the water districts you've dealt with over the last 2 biennia, where the rate setting is uniform throughout the district and all of the member municipalities have voting rights. So that is one thing that is going to be unique about the transfer here from Duxbury Moortown to the EFUD is that the fire district has transferred assets, liabilities, and legal authority, and those customers will no longer have voting rights within the municipality that's going to be offering them water services.
Representative.
Tucker, it talks about in C, all assets, liabilities, property. I mean, does there need to be things tightened up there as far as adding maybe operational duties, or is that just a given once it goes over to that?
That will be a given, and important to note, one question that I had, and I did some research in the 2017 Act that was one of the first bills that I worked on with Legislative Council was the formation of the EFUD and the EFUD charter. Even when the village transitioned to Edward Farmer Utility District, they didn't include anything in their transitional provisions about the operating agreements carrying over. And the operating agreement that is currently being relied upon with Duxbury Moortown Fire District Number 1 is with the Village of Waterbury. At least that's the copy that I got. It is not with the Edward Farrar Utility District. So legally, I think it's assumed that once an entity has possession of the infrastructure and the legal authority to apply the rates, that they also take operational control.
I'm seeing Mr. Lates, who is the town administrator, nodding his head. So Tucker, anything else you want to tell us about the words on the page? And then maybe we can have a conversation, take some testimony from Tom. Thank you very much, Tucker. So Mr. Lates, good to see you again.
Good to see you. Sorry for the last minute. The village and but actually have an agreement with the fire district dating back to the 90s, where we've essentially operated as ours for that period of time. There were conversations before my time here. I joined here late last year, but there were conversations in the spring and summer of 2022 about combining. And when I started, that was still a conversation, and I intended to take that up this year. The fire district's vote to dissolve was not something that anyone here was aware of. And then late in 2022, the chairman of the fire district walked into town hall with a check for their assets and said, "We dissolved, it's all yours." And he essentially walked away from it. At first, we weren't even sure what to do with the check. We eventually created a separate bank account, and there it sits. And we've operated as if it is ours. But in speaking to our council, some of the basic things about operating a water system we cannot do. For instance, if we've got delinquent accounts, we have no ability to shut off water. We have no ability to conduct a tax sale. So there's a need to combine the two. And it was the full intent, I think, of both EFUD and the fire district to combine. We just did not expect them to, in essence, vote to dissolve and not be an active part of the process. So here we are.
Representative Higley, go ahead.
Yeah, could you speak to the voting decision that is made? I didn't quite understand that from what Tucker had said. It sounds like folks aren't going to have a vote that are in that water district.
Are you talking about the vote to dissolve the district that they held?
No, I mean going forward.
So going forward, as the bill is written, only, in essence, the only people who can vote at EFUD's annual meeting, which incidentally is tonight, are residents of what is essentially the old village of Waterbury. So we have town customers who don't vote at our annual meeting, and then the Duxbury Moortown Fire District customers, once absorbed, would also not vote. So I think that's a pretty common relationship, exactly the same as St. Albans City and St. Albans Town, where just city residents have a vote on utility-related matters.
So I think the question that Representative Higley might really be asking is the voters of the Duxbury Moortown Fire District did not vote to dissolve their fire districts and merge with the EFUD or sort of get services from the EFUD, right? I mean, it's sort of like it's the Prudential Committee got together and voted to dissolve. And not knowing if they have bylaws that allow them to take that kind of action without a vote. That's our question, I guess.
Yeah.
And the advice of our council was that only the legislature can dissolve a fire district.
So that's true, but we usually do it because we as our legislative council has reminded us many times, we breathe life into these municipal corporations, and then we can dissolve them when when they've gone past their usefulness. But we usually do that as a result of a public vote, except for I can think of, like, for instance, it's kind of similar in Colchester they had a vote. Mm-hmm. So that's the only thing that's unusual about this. I mean, is there any historical information about sort of the creation of the Duxbury Moortown Fire District and whether the Prudential Committee had the ability to dissolve it the way that they did? That's really unusual.
None at my fingertips. Your council may have that. And in speaking with who was the gentleman who was the chair of the Prudential Committee, they struggled to have a quorum for years or to have public involvement. And it's a pretty small district. It's about 140 customers. And they held their vote at the time they did because he was actually leaving the district. So they wanted to, in their minds, hold a legal vote while they still had a quorum. So there was some logic to their process, even if it wasn't technically correct.
Okay, so the reality now is that the Duxbury Moortown Fire District number 1, it is an extraterritorial service area of EFUD.
Correct. And the reality is we are operating it. We will continue to do so. If there's a water line break, we will out there, we will repair it immediately. We will continue to bill as we have. We're simply not going to abandon those customers. But my understanding is there's, in essence, no government representation on their side of the table.
Representative Tango.
Thank you. Sort of referred to the situation in St. Albans, and I'm not super familiar with it. You must be. Is this the same situation as the sewer issue in St. Albans, which is really contentious?
Yeah, it's not the same. So, Tom, you may be able to speak to this at length, but what I would say is that the reason it's so contentious, or was before the recent meeting of the grand bargain that was struck very recently. God, thanks, Tom, for all of your help leading us up to that, because there's a lot more love between the city and the town of St. Albans now. Yeah. So the issue there was that the city owned the water, had invested in it, and that the town was an extraterritorial user. But in order to get access to new hookups, the city wanted to charge an affiliation fee to new customers. And so I don't think any of the affiliation fee that was really the thing that was causing all the problems exist here. The thing that is similar is that you have one municipality that owns the infrastructure, provides the service, and it is providing that infrastructure for a differential rate just on the water service, I think, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, to those other municipalities or, you know, to customers in other municipalities.
Entirely correct. There's about a 5% rate differential.
So none of the horrible affiliation fee debacle in Waterbury, Moortown, Duxbury area. Okay, Representative Higley.
Well, I think, to me, it reminds me a little bit of the North Sea Kingdom Solid Waste Management District. It had a provision in it where they had a certain period of time for all the towns to, you know, vote against what the commission did, in a sense, and they chose not to, so it went through. But at least there was an opportunity, a very small window maybe, but an opportunity for those towns to speak out.
Is there anybody representing, so I see that reps from Moortown and Duxbury are co-sponsors of H517, so I take it that those communities are interested in doing away with this fire district as well. Representative Stevens, would you like to, would you mind getting in on the conversation here? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Tom Stevens from Waterbury Village, or I'm sorry, EFUD. It's not short for but
and I'm not sure, Tom, if I'm going to be able to vote today in the EFUD vote. So just to give you a quick idea of where we're talking about, if you've been in Waterbury Village and you're heading down towards Montpelier, you end up going over a bridge where Snowfire Auto is and where there's a gymnasium and whatnot. That's actually Moortown. And we're talking about 140 customers. So we're talking about a corner of Duxbury and Moortown area, which may fit in the 05676 zip code or whatever. It's just an area that, because we're adjacent and been adjacent to it, when they formed the fire district to become the customer so that they can have water service. They don't get sewer service, or else they would be part of the village. I don't know how long it's been in effect, but it's been for some time. And like a small municipality, which they are, the same people ran them for many years. And I think that the element that we're talking about is people may have felt that they could just close it down. And as Tom mentioned, bring a check to the town office and say, here's the balance of what we have, and please take care of our residents. And so these residents would turn into individual customers, much the same way that Waterbury, where the EFUD sells it to other members in Waterbury who are not in the what used to be the village. And that was determined where the sewer went. So anybody outside of the village doesn't have town sewer service. The representatives from Moortown and Duxbury they were the primary sponsors on this at first because, but I don't have any information as to who came to them except to say that this was an issue. Obviously, it's important to keep water flowing to people. Tom, does the district go as far as the landfill?
I believe so.
Yeah, so the old Moortown landfill is, the cause for having fresh water was solved when they formed the district. And so now, again, I have no further information about what the voting situation was, but it was definitely a municipality that was not running at full steam. And that's why I believe that would be the motivation for closing it down, that they didn't do it according to whatever their bylaws may be, is an issue here.
Yeah, so essentially, it sounds like we're talking about a completely defunct municipality that serves 148 water customers just over the Waterbury line in Moortown and Duxbury.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess my next question would be, given that we're in the last couple of days of the session, what is the risk of us taking up and sort of trying to wrap this next year versus trying to pull off some kind of very challenging rule suspension procedural maneuver, which would definitely cause angst between both bodies this year. So is there a case to be made why there's urgency here?
The case I can make is there's a few larger customers with pretty substantial delinquencies. And as it stands now, we have no real ability to collect. In our operational agreement with the district, because they own the lines, they've got that legal authority to actually perform a shut off or to conduct a tax sale. As I understand it, we do not. And so that creates a bit of a financial challenge for us. And the problem is unlikely to get better if we wait a year. It's not 140 customers, it's a handful of customers, just like any utility district, but it is nonetheless a challenge for us.
And one of the customers is the middle school.
But we will continue to operate the system as we have. We'll continue to make sure the infrastructure works appropriately for everyone. If you wait.
Say that again, Representative.
I'm sorry.
And Tom, I started to interrupt you. I apologize. The district also includes the middle school.
Correct.
Just not that that's the biggest customer or anything.
They have paid their bill.
What's that?
Is that Duxbury?
That's Duxbury.
We also have customers on occasion who want to connect. That obviously can't happen.
So you couldn't make a new connection. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Tom, please, Representative Stevens.
In terms of whenever the session for this time being closes, we're not ending the session. We are ostensibly, not officially, but I assume we're going to have to come back in June for one or two various reasons. Would business otherwise be done? So it's entirely possible to do this half and then do the other half later?
I'm sorry.
I believe for something like this, the answer is probably yes. We've had some conversations in our committee unrelated to this, that might be a sore spot. We've just rubbed a little bit.
No, I appreciate you taking this up. This was not on my front burner, though I knew that the representatives from Moortown and Duxbury were bringing this forward. And again, it sounds like it's a situation that the sooner the EFUD, if there is a quote unquote easy way, with Tucker's language, to become owners of this, the whole system, the mechanics of the system, that would be beneficial. Otherwise, it'll be tape and duct tape until we come back next year. And I don't know what it means financially. I mean, those payments will pile up and the owners will have to pay them eventually, but obviously.
All right, committee. We've talked about a lot of things today, so we're all getting a little bit punchy. Thank you, Tom. Anything else we should know?
This is Waterbury.
Yeah, sounds like this fire district was kind of an orphan, and its last remaining people just sort of said, "Here you go, deal with it, you fun."
I don't think I've ever heard of something like this happening. I think, when we've had long conversations about merger, I still get PTSD when I hear that Linden and Lindenville get to merge and Waterbury Village never did. We created an EFUD instead. Yeah. And, but I do, in the time that I was on the select board and afterwards, I don't think I've ever heard of a fire district just bugging out like this. And it's a unique situation for you to deal with at the end of the year, and I appreciate any time that you're able to spend on it.
Thank you, Representative Stevens. So committee.
Thanks, Tom.
I especially look to my longer tenured Gov.Ops veterans for your opinions on what to do in this very unusual situation.
Well, Again, something like this, I don't think that we would object to suspending rules and moving it forward. So if we want to attempt that, I'd say let's go for it.
All right, I think helping out Mr. Lates and making sure that the water can keep flowing, especially to the Crossed Brook Middle School, is important.
That's why that's your right out.
So I would enter,
This whole piece.
well, you could just go on for the ride. We're gonna do it. We're talking about 140 water customers in Moortown and Duxbury.
And some that want to be.
And maybe some that want to be.
Let's stay right
So
here.
I would entertain a motion to accept as favorable H517 when amended by draft 1.1.
Make the motion.
Representative Nugent has moved that we support H517 when amended by draft number 1.1. I got the draft right. There's not a 1.2 out there. Okay, I'm just double checking. There's been a lot today. All right. So any other discussion? When the clerk is ready, would she call the roll?
Representative Byron.
Yes.
Representative Boyden, yes. Representative Hinga.
Yes.
Representative Morgan.
Yes.
Representative Cooper Burlington.
Yeah.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
Representative Chase.
Yes.
Representative Waters Evans.
Yes.
Representative Cooper Randolph. Representative Nugent.
Yes.
Representative Higley.
Yes,
Representative McCarthy.
Yes.
11-0-1.
Would you be willing to report this? I really deeply appreciate that. Representative Higley has kindly agreed to be the reporter of this bill. All right, everybody. Tom, thank you. We will do our best to move this along as expeditiously as we can. Great.
Town Trevor.
Have a good one. Good to see you again. All right.